This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 22nd of March 2022 and I am 2J.
I am JM.
And I am Miss K. Again, in case you missed today's headlines, here they are. Daily Nation, Ruto's sticky mess. The Standard, our pledge to Kenyans. And finally, The Star, 3 governors in trouble over graft. 2J, why don't you kick us off?
So today, I actually want to take us back to yesterday's headline from the Daily Nation.
Yeah.
Crowds for hire. An investigation into how politicians are paying crowds to create the impression of mass ground support. And I must admit, I was not surprised. For as long as there have been elections, crowds have been paid to create the image of support when there is none. Even Donald Trump's presidential campaign in 2015 famously used the services of a rent-a-crowd company. Trump's campaign hired actors to simulate public support for his candidacy, and they were paid $50 each to cheer at the event. And it's understandable why this business of crowds for hire is so successful. People will abandon their own research, information, and logic if it appears that their peers or the community have vouched for something else, because nothing draws a crowd like a crowd. But what I'm more interested in is where this crowd hiring is taking place, because it would appear that central Kenya has become the target of these fake crowds. You go to Murang'a, pay a few hundred individuals to wear yellow t-shirts and scream "Kazi ni Kazi" as you drive atop your car near a market. And it works, because it takes advantage of the stupidity of crowds and how easily they can be manipulated to follow a group and ask no questions. And this stupidity of the masses is best exemplified by the following psychological experiment. So, a woman enters the waiting room of a hospital, waiting for her appointment. After a while, a bell rings, and everyone in the room stands up and then sits back down. What the woman doesn't know is that the people already in the room have been paid, and they are part of the experiment. So the bell rings a few times, and the woman hesitates, but eventually she stands up and she sits down with the group. No one has explained why they're doing this, but she joins them. Soon the paid people are called out of the room one by one until eventually she's the only one left. But she continues to stand up and sit back down every time the bell rings. Again, she does not know why she's doing it. She's conforming to the rules of the group without the actual group. Eventually, new people walk into the waiting room who don't know these rules. When the bell rings, the original woman continues to stand up and sit down, and slowly the newcomers begin to conform to a rule that even they don't understand. And even rebels are not immune to this effect. One man you'll see who is determined to not follow the crowd eventually gives in, and he begins to stand up and sit down because the rest of the group does. So what's my point here? Is it possible that crowds have been paid and sent to confuse Gemma? Have they been paid to stand up, sit down, and scream hustler in the name of William Ruto? And every time a Kikuyu goes to a rally, he sees the crowd standing, sitting, and yelling hustler. And so he joins in. He doesn't know why he is doing it, but everyone around him is participating, so he follows the crowd. The question that we need to ask ourselves is whether the Gemma nation is foolish enough to be misled blindly. And if indeed you cannot buy a Kikuyu, but only rent one, is Mr. Ruto's expiration date around the corner?
It's possible.
Very good story there.
Very, very good story. And today I'd like to question William Ruto's fixation with that same Gemma nation. Now, in the past few weeks, as Tujia said, William Ruto has been making stop after stop in Gemma towns and marketplaces, drawing the crowds that Tujia just broke down. And looking at those borrowed mobs, we would like to hazard a thought. What if Gemma does not matter in this election? They believe that they are the kingmakers. But is it probable that they are not? We have said before that each time Raila has been on the ballot, he has gotten a consistent 44% of the vote, irrespective of who was his running mate, and without the Gemma Nation. So, is it possible that the Gemma Nation is a political shiny object meant to distract William Ruto and the Hustler Nation while Raila consolidates votes in the rest of the country? Did Uhuru turn the Gemma Nation into a red herring to throw Ruto off the scent of the presidency? Historically, red herrings were used to divert dogs from pursuing a scent. A herring would be dragged across their path, and the hounds, distracted by the new scent, would forget about their original goal and follow the fishy, smelly scent of the herring. So could it be that Uhuru Kenyatta held up the Gemma Nation as a bright, shiny object to misdirect Ruto's campaign efforts and waste his money on rent-seeking Kikuyus? And the foolishness of the Gemma Nation is that they are so flattered by Ruto's single-minded pursuit of their votes because they think so highly of themselves. And that's not a bad thing. But just because Mzee Moi referred to the masses as Wanjiko does not mean that all votes come from the mountain. And what the Gemma Nation does not realize is that the country is turning Azimio blue around them.
Indeed.
Now I'll flip my entire argument. And maybe Ruto has a point. Dan Pfeiffer, a former top advisor to Obama, once said that focus on a shiny object can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It can turn the shiny object into an actual object. So maybe the Gemma Nation will be the 2022 kingmaker. But the question is, can Ruto trust Central Kenya?
Now, supporters of Uhuru Kenyatta continue wondering whether Uhuru has a plan to stop William Ruto. And when they look back and ponder on what went wrong, they ask, but why did Uhuru give Ruto so much leeway in Central Kenya? And why did he allow Ruto's alleged accumulation spree to go unchecked? Well, Sun Tzu says that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. In other words, why fight a war if you can win it through deception? And that is the Uhuru Kenyatta logic. It is an approach that he borrowed from his mentor, Mzee Kibaki. You may recall that Kibaki, in dealing with a cunning Raila Odinga during the Grand Coalition years, never confronted him head-on. His approach was always one of appeasement, but appeasement that was geared towards finishing the opponent. Kibaki studied Raila. Uhuru has studied Ruto. And throughout his entire political career, what Ruto has lacked is self-knowledge and self-moderation. In fact, his biggest undoing is that he fails time and again to contain his excessive ambition. And so how do you deal with a man of this kind? When he makes blunders, egg him on. Encourage him to make even more blunders. And when Kenyans, so let me take us back to 2013, to the first term. When Kenyans said that Uhuru Kenyatta is a failed president because of terror attacks, as we said, on damaging ignorance, William Ruto never came to his boss's defense. When Kenyans said that Uhuru is a hopeless drunk and Ruto is the sober one running government, Ruto never came out to deny these claims. In fact, he fanned them. When the 2017 election was nullified and Kenyans called Uhuru incompetent, Ruto was not concerned. In fact, he relished. When Kenyans bashed Uhuru on corruption, Ruto never brought his weight to bear as the president's deputy. He distanced himself from the administration. Now, these are what you call crimes of omission. And oftentimes, in fact, they are a sign that one may be complicit. Whether he was complicit, we don't know. But what we do know is that he has been the biggest beneficiary of the failures in Uhuru's administration. And so what's my point here as I sum up? President Kenyatta has had a plan all along. And the game plan is simple. Never interrupt your enemy while he is making a mistake, Napoleon's words. In war, this approach is referred to as kicking away the ladder. And that is removing the ladder after the opponent has already climbed onto the roof, thereby trapping him and gaining advantage. Since term one, Ruto has been climbing the ladder, taking Uhuru Kenyatta for granted, underestimating him. He's now like 50 feet up in the air. But once that ladder is kicked away, he will take a painful tumble from that roof that is on. And that is why even when they abused and mocked Uhuru in Thika and Gatundu in the last 2 weeks, the president continued to give them the contempt card.
Yeah.
He is waiting for the day when he will kick the ladder away.
Great thoughts
Fantastic.
there.
Quite a case against Ruto. Yeah.
Quite a case. We have a 3-part criteria that we use to judge the headlines for you. We ask ourselves 3 questions. Is the headline topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful, or just plain lazy? Daily Nation, Ruto's sticky mess, The Standard, Our pledge to Kenyans, and The Star, 3 governors in trouble over graft.
It seems like the dailies have really stepped up their game in this election.
They really have.
They have.
These are not bad headlines.
Not at all.
I'm,
Like the
however,
Daily
partial to the
Nation.
Daily Nation.
Yes.
Ruto's sticky mess, I agree.
Ruto's sticky
Sticky mess.
Let's look at those intrigues that he'll have to cross over as
Yep.
we go into the election. So we have a winning headline from the Daily Nation. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons, and just like the headlines, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to judge the cartoons for you. We ask ourselves, are they humorous or dry, satirical or pessimistic, and effective, or just plain lazy? Let's start with The Star.
We'll start with the Star, which today is incredibly blurry, so we need to point that out as we get into it. But here we have a caricature of William Ruto, and he's on a tightrope,
Yep.
and he's carrying a stick, and on either end you have caricatures of Dindi Nyoro, and on the other end you have Musalia Mudavadi. And the caption there that Ruto is saying, he's saying, what is the ground saying? And I think this is in reference to the approaching deadline to choose for them to choose their running mates. And I think we'll reference here what Professor Mutahingunyi tweeted the other day, that, and specifically because Gachagua has suggested that Dindi Nyoro is going to be the preferred candidate for running mate for Ruto. But Professor has told us that he's a political tool and that he's being played with. And I quite agree with that. Is Dindi Nyoro being played? Maybe it's the fall of the favorite. So we'll just wait to see what happens. Yeah.
It's a good cartoon. Put it in the parking bay, and that Ruto on a unicycle just shows how precarious his position is in choosing his running mate.
Indeed.
We'll go on to the Daily Nation.
Yeah, so in the Daily Nation we have a caricature of William Ruto and Raila in the TV screen, and they're in a boxing ring, throwing punches at each other. And Uhuru is outside of, it would appear, the screen. He's outside the screen, but still in that scene. And he's coaching Raila on how to defeat his opponent. Azimio, La Umoja. Obviously, the president came out 2 weeks ago and he declared his
Preferred
unreserved support for Raila Odinga, and that's what's happening right now. That's what this is in reference to. It looks like Ruto's getting a whooping. May he get a whooping.
And what's so wrong with the president, throwing his support behind someone? Is it that the DP expected or assumed it would be him?
Yeah.
Actually,
Presumptuous.
It is presumptuous, and besides, the presidency was a DP's to lose when he did that himself. So if now he's supporting someone else, now because you lost it, don't get salty. On to finally the Standard. Here we have Gado. He has given us caricatures of William Ruto holding a banner called Hustler Nation, and Baba being held by a caricature of Uhuru Kenyatta holding Baba Tosha, vote Raila. Across the river from them, the River Yala, is a crowd of Kenyan masses looking very depressed, and inside the River Yala are bodies floating on it. Now, yes, 19 bodies were found floating on River Yala, and yes, we are in election season, but taking these 2 unrelated things and juxtaposing them together here, I think, is confusing at best.
And disrespectful to the people who lost their lives.
It's true, and even their families as they look at this. Yes, it is something that is gripping the nation at the moment, and it is only sad, and that we should respect that privacy for the people who are suffering about it. But I don't like it. I say we toss it.
I say we toss all the cartoons.
I agree with you.
Right?
Okay.
We have no winning cartoon. Just as a reminder, we had a winning headline from the Daily Nation. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find us on your TV screens. We're on Pan, Free to Air, GoTV, and Star Times. I will leave you with a quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt. And he says, speaking of crowds, in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way. Because anyway, as Jay Leno said, politics is just but show business for ugly people. Do have a good evening.